Hi, thanks for joining us, friends and family, for another episode of Rex and Shana. There's Rex! So we're with my parents tonight, and we're having a discussion about the aging process and disabilities and what it's like in a family structure for people who already had parents transition, or whose parents are here and they're aging, or what it's like for people with disabilities as they age. So come join us.
Okay.
All right. Radix is helping us.
Maybe say hello and introduce you guys. Or...
These are my parents. This is Buddy and Ruby.
Hi there.
Hi. Hello. All right.
We're here.
We're here. So, yeah, it's been an interesting conversation because we've been talking about what it's like to age and what it's like through different processes and stages in our life as we transition. In my work, I do a lot of work with transitioning skills and disabilities. And that's transitioning from like junior high to high school, or from high school to college, or college to independent living, or as close to independent living as there is, or people who maybe can't live independently and they choose to go into a roommate situation with maybe a care provider, who maybe there's 3 people with disabilities living in a house, all close in age, all with similar disabilities and the same level of functioning, but they have a roommate in more of a age-appropriate lifestyle situation than just living with parents forever. So we can talk about where we are with disabilities.
Sounds good.
Okay, because we're all at a different place in life. All right.
Okay. So what do you want us to talk about?
Well, I mean, one thing else I guess I could just kind of chime in with is, you know, I have a parent. My mother passed away back in 1988, so I've been on my own for a long time in that regard. But I did just recently discover that my father, who's 83 years old, was recently officially diagnosed with late-stage Alzheimer's. And my brother and I were just recently visiting with him, and just and talking with him about everything he's been going through and where he's at. And one of the hardest things about it was watching somebody who, and I understand myself, even at 56 years old to some extent, but watching somebody who's losing themselves, who's starting to lose their identity, who's less and less being able to do the things that they love to do. You know, even doing something as simple as just taking a drive to the store to go pick up some groceries and pick up some dinner or something like that. And watching him go through, you know, the difficulties and struggles he's had, you know, and it's not very often that I see my dad cry, and, you know, and he did. He's having a very tough time going through what he's going through, because I think part of it is he's realizing what's happening to him, and I think it's taken a little bit of time to come to terms with that. And, you know, witnessing that, you know, again, it's my dad. You know, my brother and I, we love our dad, and just, you know, witnessing that it was tough. And we just did our best, of course, to be there for him and just try to talk him through it. And just remind him that he's not alone. He doesn't have to go through this alone. You know, he's got a wonderful partner that he's been with for over 30 years. So thankfully, he doesn't have to do this alone. But at the same time, I know it's hard for him and his partner both.
That's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, our part here is that we are Shana's parents, and she's been diagnosed with the autism, but she was older. She had already finished college when they came up with the diagnosis. And all her life, we knew there was something different, and we brought her to all the medical doctors that we knew and the psychologist. No one came up with the diagnosis until she was out of college. And so we had struggled trying to help her through all those years. We always encouraged her that she could do whatever she wanted to do. We would back her no matter what happened. We were always there to back her and to support her in whatever way we could. And so after college, she worked a little bit in the care business of people with disabilities. She was helping others that have disabilities.
Specifically autism. Specifically autism, that's what I was focused on and worked in before I got the diagnosis.
Yes. And so some jobs she was not able to do, and some she was able to do. But she also has some physical health problems that have kept her from working for a number of years. And we just support her in every way that we can. It's difficult for us to see her not be able to do the things that she wants to do and could do if she had the physical health as well as the opportunity to get the jobs to do it. Because she went to graduate school and got a master's in psychology, and she has many certifications. One day her health is going to be fine, and she is going to be able to work and accomplish the things that she set out to do.
Now, I've known Shana, she's been my friend for a number of years. Of course, I'm not her parents, I have not known her entire life. And had you never explained this to me, I would have no idea. To me, she's a really brilliant, warm, amazing person, full of life. And I mean, I wonder, what were the clues? I mean, what seemed like, I guess what was different that where she ultimately came across and had this diagnosis at some point? I mean,
People with the people with autism or Asperger's, which is what she was diagnosed as having, are they're either very outgoing or they're very timid. Well, you know, she's very outgoing and friendly to everybody, and I was going somewhere with this.
Well, main thing
just
is,
wondering what the clues were. I mean,
the clues were.
like I said, I've not known her whole life, but I mean, I would never have had any idea. She's just this really brilliant, intelligent person that I'd love to hang out with.
Very true. But it took her a while to be able to understand people because she doesn't read their body language and she doesn't understand what a certain number of conversations were about. Even she has difficulty with that. She has overcome a lot of it. She has learned a lot how to deal with it. And then when she misunderstood people, sometimes it would end up being a disagreement or an argument or a breakup of their friendship, simply because she thought they were saying something other than what they were saying, or she would be saying something other than what they heard. Communication was difficult for her at a young age, and those are the things that gave us a clue. Even at a young age, she did not want to sleep at night. She wanted to stay up at night and be awake in the daytime. I mean, at nighttime. So that was a little different from any child we had seen or known of, our lifestyle. So there were numerous little clues, nothing major that said what she had.
I wouldn't make eye contact.
Yes,
I wouldn't look anybody in the face.
That's
Because
right.
you're very engaging. Like I said, just in the last 5-6+ years we've known each other, I mean, you're one of the most engaging people that I know. In terms of a conversation, when we talk to each other, we're always like right here talking to each other, and of course have incredible conversations.
She has learned how to do that, I think.
Yeah,
Is that right?
That was not second nature.
No.
I didn't understand communication. So for me, communication was, I don't know how to ask people what matters to them, which is kind of funny now. But I know how to talk at people about what interests me. It was terrible.
So I can see where misunderstandings would ensue.
Right. And also perspective taking develops at age 4 for neurotypical children, and perspective taking didn't develop for me. So I had to learn to be really curious about things and to think outside of myself and to stop making up stories about what was going on for somebody else and just ask. And hopefully they'd be honest. And most people, when they want to engage with you, when they're there to make a connection or to create an attachment instead of break connection, when they're really there for the right reasons and they really want to show up, they're not those toxic friends, they're the real friends, they're going to tell you, and you can just ask. But you never make up a story. You never draw a conclusion or jump to something. You ask. And now,
Just try to stay real, right?
right, you stay real and you be curious, and it's okay to wonder and say, you know, I don't really understand what's going on for you right now. Tell me what you're thinking. that's a perfectly legitimate thing, instead of
is.
saying, I can't read your body language, therefore you're mad at me. And that was how I interpreted everything, so I thought the world was against me.
Understandable.
Yeah,
It was lonely and very depressing, because I felt like everything was stacked against me because I couldn't read or understand anything.
And she was too trusting.
like,
She was too trusting, especially as a child, too trusting of other people, because they're not always up to good.
Not true, very true.
and we had both been raised with neurotypical siblings and friends, and we had no clue as to what autism looked like. I had never been around an autistic person, and for Shana to be autistic, we didn't even think about that in the beginning. We knew there was something different, and she was talking about eye contact. When she was young, I used to try to get her, not force her, but get her to look at me in the eye when we had conversation. I'd say, look at me, sweetie, and she would try. And sometimes she couldn't for very long, but over time she got better and better at it. But it's not second nature to her. She has to work at looking people in the eye.
Would you say it's second nature now? I mean, that's one of my
Oh,
personal
yes.
things. Engagement, looking into the eyes is one of my biggest things. And I don't know, maybe it's just our friendship. But
Yes.
I mean, like anytime we talk, like right now, I mean, there's an engagement taking place. I mean, is it natural for you now?
Absolutely. But you're also very heart-centered, and I'm very heart-centered. So connecting with you is so easy. But getting to know people, particularly some of our friends who have a history in Denver, and they have a history with each other, and I see their interactions and stories about remember when, and I sit back and listen. I don't even know what to say.
Sure. I don't know what to say sometimes either.
You know, so I listen to their conversations and I smile, but I feel like the extra wheel stuffed in the back of the trunk of a car, you know, and I don't think people mean to do that. I think it's just what people do, because they already have their connections and they already have their things established. So when somebody new shows up, they don't change the conversation with the people with whom they're comfortable and familiar. And that's happened so many times. And I can't just become invisible even though I want to. So I sit back and I listen, I smile, and I laugh at some of the jokes and the inside things that they share. I wish that they would be as curious about me as I am about them, but I can't make people want to know. I can't make them want to include.
Well, sometimes they're just very, very preoccupied with whatever it is they're going through in their life, and that doesn't even occur to them sometimes, I think.
Exactly, I don't think people mean it rude.
Right.
But
For the most part, I think that's the case. I don't think they
Yeah.
really mean it.
Right, but there's a lot of exclusion that happens then, and you know, how do we handle that? So,
And plus, people can be a little cliquey sometimes, not just in the goth scene, but in any kind of a different scene or social environment. People, especially when they've known each other for a real long time, and that can tend to happen, especially for the new person coming in. They kind of, sometimes they just don't. They almost don't
Right.
see the new person coming in sometimes, and you know, they don't stop to think about how that might be making them feel.
they
I
don't
don't
know.
feel well,
No.
no such thing.
But I do remember times when I was real little, like maybe 2 or 3 years old, where you would try to make eye contact with me, and you'd actually like grab my chin and turn it toward you, so I would look you in the eye, and I remember just closing my eyes because it was so painful. It was absolutely painful to look you in the eye.
Yeah. But I
Do you
was
remember
trying-
that?
Yes, sure. But it was my way of trying to help you to get to where you could look people in the eye, and I was trying to teach you that that's how you communicate. It improves communication, because if you look away, people think you're not interested in a conversation and you're not listening.
Would you say what were you feeling in the moment? I mean, I know you talked about pain. Was it a kind of an extreme level of shyness that would hold you back?
No, it was
or-
actual, like, so uncomfortable. It wasn't shy. It was so uncomfortable. I would become nonverbal. I wouldn't know how to respond. I just close my eyes and wait for that really painful moment
Was it kind of like a
to
moment of
pass.
confusion in that? And is it overwhelming or?
It was beyond overwhelming.
Okay.
It was so, the trying to make that eye contact connection was so intense, that the pain involved with it can't even be described. There isn't anything like it. This is, I mean, it's a representation of that to maybe give a visual for people who are watching to understand. So as a kid, I loved Mr. Rogers. I still love Mr. Rogers.
I love Mr. Rogers. I
Love
do too.
Mr. Rogers. Okay, so Mr. Rogers would get right up at the TV and he'd look right at you and he'd talk right to you and he'd get right in there. He'd make eye contact with you and I would flip out and I'd bury my head in the carpet and giggle uncontrollably and freak out because he was staring right in my eyes and he was the size of the TV and his eyes were massive and they just stared right into mine. Oh my God, I had no capacity for that. Because his eyes didn't change, he barely blinked. Oh my God, he was like not even real, but he was so kind, but he was so much bigger than life because he was Fred Rogers and oh my God, the world was ending every time he did that. Well, every time he did that was an entire episode. So the whole show, I'm like, please bring on King Friday the 13th. Because he doesn't do this to me. I need him to get a pussycat. You know, like it was anything other than him staring right in my eyes and talking to me about some really important life lesson I had to know as a social skill. Because I didn't have the social skills to get to the social skill. You know, it was that. So I would bury my head in the avocado shag carpet and I would just giggle and freak out and act weird and I couldn't be in my body and I couldn't be in the moment and I couldn't be with the TV and I couldn't be touched and I couldn't have people around and I hated that people were watching me go through this, but getting through the moment was harder than people watching me get through the moment. So I had to let go of the self-awareness of people watching me struggle through the moment just to get through the moment. It was every level of discomfort to the highest degrees that can't be described. That was my experience. And if that's what would happen with the TV, there was a screen to block something. When it was a real person, there was nothing to block it, so it was even harder. It's the only way I can describe it.
But was it wrong to try to help you learn to make eye contact?
Not at all. It was the right thing to do.
Okay. It worked out good for you because now you have the ability. A lot of people don't ever get that ability to look people in the eye.
That's true.
They go through their entire life.
Well, I wonder at some point you just made the decision that's what you really wanted to do. Maybe you recognized your parents' love in doing that, and you wanted to somehow maybe honor that, and then wanted that for yourself at some point.
Right. Well, now I know
So
the
you wanted to help
easiest
yourself.
way. Now I know the easiest way to get people to make eye contact who don't normally want to make eye contact, especially when you're younger. It's so much easier. There was one little boy I worked with, and for him, I would just go up to him and I would call his name. And I would do this wherever his eyes were, and I'd bring him to mine. And then finally, after doing this several times, he'd look at me. I was like, there are those blue eyes. I see you now. And I'd call him by name. I was like, hey, how are you? And I knew he could hear me all along, but he had very, very poor verbal skills. He could say parts of words, and they were partial syllables, and that was it. And I was like, hey, what's going on? And he'd look at me and he'd smile. And I'm like, we've got it. There's a connection. When I saw him.
So you offered that positive reinforcement. So he made that eye contact. All of a sudden he just got this very loving, open response. And
yeah. And so I had this rule with him that I started with everybody. If you're not looking at me, I don't know that you can hear me. So let's let each other know that we hear each other by looking at each other. And that's how we broke that in our small groups. So it's like, if you don't look at me, I don't know that you hear me, so how do I know you're listening? And then people would look, we'd all look at each other, we'd start smiling at each other, and then people would get excited because we're all smiling. Then we'd be happy, then we'd have things to be happy about. And then we could start naming emotions. And then it wasn't mad, happy, sad. Because that's all we had to start with. That's all any of us had to start with. And I'm just like the people I'm working with. So I'm like, hey, what's more than that? And I'm like, well, I'm thinking, or I'm excited, or we started filling in the blanks. And when we're working with poor communication skills, it's like, let's say we want water, it's wa-er. Okay, let's try again. And we just keep building it. And then we start saying water. And then it just grows. Then it becomes bigger sentences and bigger words and bigger things. So after working with this little boy, doing in-home training with him, he was 4 at the time. I saw him again when he was 8. He came to the Autism Center where I worked. And I was him with his mom. And I looked, I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, so is your husband still working here? Do you still live here? What happened when you moved? I remember you looking for services there. But she's like, you remember everything about our lives. I said, well, of course I do, because that's this person right here who's now 8 years old, and your mom, and you are this person. How can I ever forget you? And she started crying because she said, I didn't know I mattered that much. I said, you always mattered that much. How could you not matter that much to anyone, not to mention everyone? And I heard him talk, and he was speaking so clearly, so fast, full sentences, and I started crying. And I said, the last time I saw him, he was struggling to say water. She said, do you remember that? And I said, well, I remember celebrating every time you'd make eye contact. And then I started talking to him, and he remembered me, which was really moving, and then he was full eye contact. So everything that we did to build those skills for eye contact that took 6 months of a foundation stuck, and it became natural for him. And it was
as
amazing.
it has for you.
Well, exactly, but it can for all of us. That's the reason I tell this story, because these skills can just be dropped and picked up, and you drop these little crumbs, and people just need them.
This is what's truly possible.
They
And it's
want
real.
them. I'm one of those people, right? I'm not talking about somebody out there. When I talk about this person, I'm talking about myself.
We've got the first person experience, the first person perspective experience.
And it's
Been there,
very,
done that.
and it's really different being a professional doing the work who's also had the personal experience. It's just not the same as the modeling the behavior. It's, I live this, I know how hard it is, you know?
Yes, and by the same token, we had no experience, no knowledge, no education about someone with autism, and we were learning as we grew with you, and you were so intelligent. If you remember, I used to read to you every night when I came home from work, and one night you picked up the book and started reading to me at 3 years old.
Yeah, I had just turned 3.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And I took the book. I thought you had memorized the pages from me reading to you, and I'd flip through different pages, and you would start reading what was on that page.
I don't know how I learned to read.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how I learned how to read. I taught
Yeah.
myself. I watched Sesame Street. They taught me the pronunciation of letters. And once I learned how to pronunciate letters from Sesame Street, that was it. I can solve a puzzle. Reading's solving a puzzle. It's easy.
Yeah.
So I just turned 3 and I started reading. It was
Yeah.
really
And
simple.
so to us, you were super intelligent. You were our special girl.
until dyslexia became overwhelming.
But the point I'm making, Shana, is you had some clues that you had autism, but you didn't have a lot of them. And we were always proud and amazed at what you could accomplish. And you loved to go out and sell things like your rock collection, or
Roly-polies.
roly-polies, anything she could get to sell. She would go down the street and knock on people's doors and want to sell them some roly-polies,
Nice.
or sell them her rock collection, or
Right on.
different. She loved to be around people, and that's not typical of people with autism. You were a special situation, and we got to experience a lot with you because of that.
That's
And
true.
it was fun, the hard times and the good times. And you love traveling.
I love traveling.
Yeah, we took her on a lot of trips, and she learned a lot about nature, about the world of traveling. I remember when you were like, 18 months old, you and I went rock climbing, and you were so happy, you were laughing.
I remember that mountain, that little hill.
Yeah, I'd push you up the hill, and
it was all wet and slimy and full of wet leaves, and I couldn't climb it.
Yeah.
And you pushed me up, and I laughed so hard sliding down that I didn't even try climbing anymore.
You didn't care whether you fell or not.
Oh, that was so fun.
They had been pushing you.
That
And
was still one of my happiest memories.
Yeah, and those kind of things kind of kept us from realizing exactly what it was, because we had no experience with it, and you were doing fun things and having a good life, but you did have the problem, the
Right.
symptoms that, and mostly yours showed up later in the social skills.
I think they showed up kind of early, because when I started reading at 3, I was obsessed with National Geographic magazine. And I wanted to go to every part of the world, to every single village in every country, and meet every person on earth. I wanted to understand why they dressed different, why their music was different, why their clothes were different, why their religion was different, why their customs were different, why the culture varied. I wanted to understand the inner workings of every single individual tribe's cultures and customs. I wanted to know everything anthropological that I could possibly understand. So my goal at 3 was travel the world and meet everybody on the planet and understand what makes people so different and so unique. That did not make me cool with the other 3-year-olds. I had nothing in common with them, because other 3-year-olds weren't into travel, they weren't into culture and religion, they weren't into music, they weren't into customs, they weren't into food, they weren't into locations on the planet and ways of life and travel. They didn't read National Geographic, and they didn't embrace the things that I did, which was, what is love, what brings us together? They're 3, they're being normal 3-year-olds. I'm not that, and it made it really hard. I didn't fit in.
Imagine.
Yeah. But you get that, because you find at 56, it can be hard to fit in.
Well, even though I
Sometimes.
may have been, I guess, neurotypical as a 3-year-old, I've never really fit in. I've always been different. I don't know, maybe I would have been diagnosed, I don't know, but I don't know about autism, but maybe I would have been diagnosed somehow in that capacity, because I've always been unusual. As a result, I got picked on a lot from pretty much day 1, so I mean, I've always been an unusual kid. For whatever that's worth. I mean, I don't know, the reasoning behind that, but I've always been an unusual kid.
Well, I mean,
I know I'm an unusual adult now, so I guess the traumatic brain injury, I guess, kind of added to that perhaps, because I definitely am in a whole different plane. And I know you relate to this, I'm definitely in a very different place from a lot of people. It seems like sometimes I'm a little isolated and alone as a result, but then other times I feel very connected. So it kind of goes both ways, as I know you kind of expressed already.
yeah, the connection is what I felt at 3. I also felt the isolation at 3.
Yeah.
But you feel that now since traumatic brain injury.
Right.
It's like you feel all things from everywhere all at
Oh
once.
yeah, it's got switched on, like,
Yeah.
it's full bore, that's for sure. The empathy, the sensitivities, even the intuition, and it's kind of made me Charlie OCD, because now I can't help it. I break like everything down to like crazy details. I mean, I don't have to walk in like circles or something like that, like you see the TV show Monk. I'm not quite like that, but I mean, everything in my brain just works like at a hypersensitive and a hyper detailed level just all the time. Even just going to the grocery store and deciding which can of soap to pull off the aisle, I have to sit there and have a process or have a thought about it. Okay, do we grab this kid or do we grab this?
Right. Okay, so here's a question I have. So, I mean, I have a lot of experiences with very spiritual beings, right? Very spiritual beings. And I have since I was a baby. And you have those experiences.
I've had those experiences my whole life. Even when I didn't necessarily believe in it, I was having those kinds of experiences.
And there's a lot of literature to back up claims and to show that people with neurological differences tend to have more of those experiences than neurotypical individuals. What was that like for you as parents, having a kid who was having visitations and things from people who've transitioned out of this realm coming back to this realm to see their kid. I mean, that had to be kind of interesting for you.
Well, it's very confusing to us because Ruby and I, either one had ever experienced anything like that. My life has always been very solid. This generation, this time is where I live, and I'm here, and I've never seen a spirit. I believe in spirits. I know they're a spirit, but I've never experienced one. You were as a young age, you were in your room talking about who is that over there in the room, and she was seeing some other beings that we did not see, and that was confusing to us, a little alarming. That's why we took you to many doctors, even though none of them were the right ones to diagnose your ailment. We were trying to find out what it was that made you different. But you were never afraid of the spirits that you were seeing.
Yeah, I mean, it was seeing
You always
ghosts.
felt like you were comfortable with them. They were okay people.
There were some that were a little scary, but that wasn't common. Most were not scary. Only a couple were scary to me.
The earliest I remember about that you were.
I was still in a crib. I was in the baby bed. The earliest memories I remember were still in the baby bed.
You saying anything about that, but in your room.
You weren't
You
talking
said,
yet, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
You said who were those children? I said, what children? And he said, those that were in our room last night. I said, there weren't any children in your room last night. You here? Remember, you slept right here. Yes, I know. I said, well, where were they? You said, right over there by the chest of drawers. I said, well, what were they doing? Oh, they were just talking to one another and playing. Scared me to death. Because she was so sure that's what, tell me exactly what she had seen.
Yeah, and it continued all the way into your adulthood.
It still continues.
Yeah.
I see stuff on a almost daily basis, but that's normal life for me.
Yeah, and since we had never experienced it, it was hard to understand and even accept at
That's
first,
right.
because we didn't know if you were hallucinating or what.
Or
But
imagination or something.
We always backed you and said, whatever you see, we didn't deny it.
No, you didn't. You never said I was
Yeah.
wrong.
No, you never. We always accepted what you said as being true because we knew you didn't lie to us or anything.
Right.
And so we had to learn to listen to you
Mm-hmm.
and accept and try to figure it out as best we could, which we didn't do a good job of figuring it out because we still never experienced. Now, Mom did experience with you one time.
Yeah, I turned my back, and
Yeah.
Mom saw something that I didn't see, but that I had experienced many times before.
Yeah.
In that house.
Yeah.
So that I was relieved that she finally got a turn.
Yeah.
I was like, she gets it.
As soon as I asked who that was, she said, oh, you finally saw one, she said.
That was my response. I was so relieved.
She didn't even turn to see who it was or what I said, well, who was that? And she said, well, I went to pick her up at her apartment, and she was just coming out, she said I should just honk and just wait for her, right in front of the door. So that's what I did. And she opened the door, and she didn't even look up in the apartment, but she came on out. And no sooner had she gotten to the car, I asked her, well, who was that? And she said, because I looked into the apartment from where I was, the sun was shining right in, and I could see this little girl standing behind the couch and leaning on it like a little girl would do at that age. And then there was she says, but I said, well, who was that? Because and why was she leaving a little girl by herself? I couldn't understand that. And she said, oh, you finally saw one, she said. And I said, what do you mean?
She turned white.
No, she said, I said, what do you mean? She said, well, that was one of us. You finally saw one. I said, oh, well, that's ridiculous. I said, but then I got to thinking about that child.
But you saw it though, I saw her though.
Yeah.
Well, I knew which one she saw. She didn't have to describe it because that little girl would come out of my closet every night. I was like, I knew exactly who you were seeing. And you could even see her reflection in the TV. She was so prevalent. Oh, yeah. Other people saw her reflection as well when she would show up. They wouldn't just see her, they would see her in her reflection.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I know exactly who you saw. I don't know who it was. She apparently passed around turn of the century for, early 20th century, but.
No, she was, I would say she was dressed kind of like, she was wearing a white blouse, sleeves down here, and then had a big ruffle and then a little, not lace, but some kind of little decoration on the cuff. And this was with an elastic here, and so that was loose. The collar, she was wearing like a vest type of thing. And the collar laid flat on top of the vest up here.
From the dress.
Yeah, the collar of the
dress.
of the dress, of the blouse is what it was, laid over that. Well, I guess it was, I never did see the bottom half of it. She had hair about like a light brown. But she was just hanging on stand. But there was a couch, and she was hanging on the back of the couch like that, just watching you walk out.
Her dress was long and white.
And then
didn't see the rest of it.
I never saw the rest of it. She was just holding on to the back of the couch like a child would play. That's how she was dressed. So I don't know when that was from. That could have been from when I was little, dressed like that.
It was definitely dated. It looked very rural and very turn of the century to me, but what do I know?
But I wondered if Shana had seen her as she was leaving, because she's right there in the same room in the living room, and not this far from her, a little bit more. But Shana didn't say, well, she didn't even glance over that way. She didn't say, well, I'll see you later, or I'll be back in a little while. She didn't say anything, and that's not like Shana. She said nothing to her, didn't acknowledge that she was there. So I don't know if she saw her right then or not, but she came up when she got to the car. I had to ask who that was, because I saw her as clearly as I saw Shana. And that's all I can say.
That's a lot of detail. That's remembering a lot of details.
Well, it was quite an experience.
Totally understand.
And that's all I know about that.
But it's interesting, there's a lot of documents, a lot of research that's done on people with autism having this sense and being able to see people who've transitioned out of this life, because we're all interconnected still, souls are eternal, so people come in from other planes. And it's very interesting when you watch them come in from other planes of existence, because they're all parallel and everything's happening all at once, all around. Yeah.
Good way to explain it. Coming from a near-death experience,
Right, you would know.
I get that.
And you
So
died.
I live that every single day, so
Yeah.
that's kind of my part of my reality now. Although I did have experiences as a kid too that are
Right.
I saw, I won't get into that right now, but I definitely had some experiences.
Right.
You saw people too.
I did, yes. Can I just real quick one for, I know we're really wanting to talk about what's going on with you a little bit more so, but I had one night, when I was 8 years old, I lost my first best friend I ever had. He was only 11 when he died. It was doctor error kind of a thing, very, very sad, very unexpected loss. One of those could have been avoided kind of things. But anyways, first time I ever went to a funeral, and even as an 8-year-old, I went to an open casket funeral and got to experience that, as a child. And again, trying to process and grasp this, that, I think it was Jeff, but we called him Jeffy, and just grasping that he was never going to come back. And that even without the funeral, I just kept waiting for him to open his eyes and get up, and we were going to go play, and, because like we always were. But I remember not too long thereafter, I had a bunk bed that I slept in, and I slept in the top bunk of the bunk bed, and nobody slept in the bottom bunk. My brother had his own room. And just remember just waking up one night, and I had a little glow of my little digital alarm clock that was sitting down at the table below, and I just remember 2, 3 in the morning or something like that, and just waking up, something woke me up, and I just remember looking down at my alarm clock and laying back down, and there he was, sitting at the bottom of my bed, just kind of crouching down, just kind of looking at me, and there was no real exchange that took place, but I just saw him sitting there, just had the most peaceful, blissful look in his eyes. It was kind of like he was okay. It was his way of just coming to visit, and I tried to talk to him, and as soon as I started to speak to him, he just kind of just slowly fade into the darkness of my room. But I just remember so distinctly seeing him just kind of like the way he did as a kid. He just had a way just kind of crouching down and just, we just, talk out, or especially when we were playing in our sandbox or something. He didn't always sit down. He was, oftentimes just kind of crouch down and we'd play and do whatever we were doing in the stand or building a model or something like that. But that was one of those things that just stuck with me because it was like, there you are, Jeffy. Oh my gosh, Jeffy. Oh, no, Jeffy, I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Everybody just had the most peaceful look. And it's just one of those things that, especially when I look back now, just letting me know it's okay.
That's
Okay.
what I
I'm all right.
Jeffy, just let you know he's
Yeah.
Hey there. And we're taping. You want to join us?
Sure.
Cool. Come
All right.
sit. All right. So we're going to have somebody else join us, which is really cool. Because we're talking about what it's like with disabilities, being an adult, and all the challenges. Hi there.
Timing
How
is
are
everything,
you?
right?
Doing okay?
Yes.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
You're good?
Yeah.
All right. Come on in. Let's pull up a chair. I'm going to reposition this a little bit. Hey, the more the merrier. This is so great.
Just let
See
you know
what we
this
can
is
do
truly
here.
spontaneous and organic. Anybody that's watching this,
Here.
is having a nice
You know what? I'm
conversation
gonna flip
amongst
this
friends
for a
and family
second. We're going to get more people
and
in.
hanging out.
Thank you for being patient with us because this is
Yeah,
real.
Thank you for joining us.
This is what
Seriously,
happens.
This is a lot.
This is real.
One of the things that I like to do is just again, just
Yeah,
show you
you can't
something
have
real,
any shoes on.
honest.
Oh, we're going to just take them off right there and then join us?
Yes.
Perfect.
Whatever you
Pull
feel,
the
brother.
chair. You're going to pull this chair. I'll put it, grab this chair and pull it around. This is great. The more the merrier.
We're not filming right now.
We are.
We are.
This is it. We're filming.
Okay.
This is great.
This is new to me.
I don't know, maybe I can tell you about, but listen, I guess my imaginary friend, this is kind of, while we're kind of
Let me hear
transitioning
this.
and getting
Yeah.
very comfortable here. This is another kind of crazy thing, because I remember this girl so real. I remember I had babysitters, when I was growing up in the first house I remember living in, and her name was Nancy. She was this very pretty, like Native American girl, and I remember I saw she was friends with the family. She used to come over all the time, and even though she was obviously older than me, we used to hang out all the time. She was like one of my best friends. And I remember I swear she used to babysit. I'm telling you, she babysat. And I remember thinking about this. We moved into a new house, and after we moved, I don't remember seeing her after we moved. And I just hadn't thought about it for a while. And I remember, years later, talking to my mom about it, and remembering Nancy. Hey, Mom, remember Nancy back in the day? And talking about some of the babysitters that we lived in a subdivision called Gulf Manor in Michigan. And Mom's like, Nancy? Who's Nancy? And like, there wasn't a Nancy. And I'm like, no, seriously. And I described her to her, what she looked like, everything, the way she used to dress. And like, come on, no, Nancy. I mean, I remember her so well. I mean, she was around all the time. I mean, I remember having conversations and talking to her. She was this most beautiful, amazing person. And I remember she was a kid. She was one of my best friends. It's like, I'm telling you, there was no Nancy. Like, wait a second, come on. I remember her to this day. And all these years later as an adult, I remember her like she was a regular part of my life as much as I remember anybody else in my life at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I was a kid having a very overactive imagination. I'm open to that possibility. But because it was such a real memory and something that's just really stuck and still sticks to this day, again, as a kid, maybe I was experiencing spirits. And I remember having seen Jeffy when I was 8. This would have been when I was like 3, 4, 5 years old. Maybe I think 6 years old at the most when we moved. But I remember for years, she had been around as long as I remember her, from my first memories to the time we moved out of that house. So maybe she lived there before or something to that effect. I don't know, but all I know is to this day, I remember her vividly. I can describe what she looked like, how tall she was. She had a very unique way of dressing. I mean, everything. I can just totally describe her to a T. So, I mean.
And you got her name.
Yeah. I don't remember the last name, but her name was Nancy. My mom's like, no, Rex, I mean, I'm telling you, I swear there was no Nancy. I don't remember Nancy. I'm like, wow, Mom, I remember her so vividly. So like, okay, so it is what it is, I guess. But I mean, like I say, to this day, I remember her like here yesterday, practically. So whatever I was experiencing, to me, it was very, very real. And I swear again, all these memories of her are just very profound, and she meant a lot to me. We were such close friends, and as a little kid, I didn't have a lot of friends. Like I said, I was kind of that little weird kid, and I didn't have that much in the way of like close friends as a kid. And but she was just an amazing part of my childhood.
That's great. I love hearing about the Nancy. That's so great.
I think it was fortunate that you had her.
I'm grateful, absolutely. I mean, she meant a lot. She got me through, like I said, I don't know, I guess a lot of my childhood, we kind of had these lonely periods, and she really got me through. She meant a lot. She still means a lot.
Right.
Real or imagined, however you want to interpret that, she means a lot to me.
That's it, yeah. So we're talking about the aging process and what it's like with disabilities and what it's like for somebody whose parents have passed, what that feels like, what it's like for parents who are older who have a child with disabilities, what it's like being an older child with disabilities. And you might have something to say about this, you know, being in my life and seeing the ins and outs and the daily stuff with disabilities, and what it's like with autism specifically, what it's like with communication, like just different things. If you want to chime in and you want to add something, you're more than welcome. You know,
Or if you've had one of those kind of experiences yourself, perhaps. Maybe if you're something unique in your childhood, I suppose. I'm sure there's a lot of unique qualities, but maybe, I don't know, something extra sensory, or maybe something that, I don't know, just different, or sticks out somehow.
yeah. I'm glad you decided to join.
No pressure, man. Just kidding. He just sat down. He just literally just walked in.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're talking about
Getting thrown into this conversation.
Yeah, it's everything from what it's like before a diagnosis, what it's like with a diagnosis, what it's like helping people with a diagnosis, what it's like with our own struggles, you know, what it's like for my parents with their struggles that they see with me, how the experience is for them. You know, we're just kind of sharing places of the journey with disabilities, you know, adults with disabilities, and also the transitioning skills, because that's a big part of adulthood and being an adult, and what different transitions are like. And, you know, you went through a huge transition when your mom passed.
Sure.
You know, moving here, not knowing anyone, was a huge transition, coming from Houston to Colorado, where I still have a lot of my life in Houston. I have a lot of my life throughout Texas, but I have my life here in Colorado, and you know, it's all transitions. Life is nothing but transitions, and you know.
Well, I can speak a little bit about raising you. We struggled every day trying to do the right thing to help you. You had difficulty in school. You had difficulty with friends picking on you and or acquaintances at school and everything. You had a couple of real good friends who are still your lifelong friends. During that process, we worried a lot about what your future was going to be like. We didn't know if you were going to be accepted, if you were going to be able to go to college. You had been told by teachers and counselors that you'd never be able to go to college.
Not college material.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you went to college. You.
I got so many diagnoses during college.
Yes.
But no help for them. But a lot of diagnosis for learning disabilities.
Yeah. So we were struggling with doing the right thing to guide you and help you all through that. You would sometimes have, I guess you call them breakdowns, whatever, where the world was overwhelming you,
Oh, yeah.
and you wouldn't do anything but cry or get upset, angry.
I wasn't even angry, it was hurt. It was despair.
Hurt.
Okay.
It was hopeless.
Yeah, you were never mean, vicious, abusive to anybody. You love everybody, but people were not nice to you, even some relatives who didn't understand you because you were different. And we were trying to help you in every way we could. I remember when we finally got the diagnosis that we had a family meeting with all of our relatives to tell them, and some accepted it with understanding, some did not, some could not understand what we were talking about.
Some were crying.
Yeah, and
I wasn't there.
No.
I remember how much that hurt me, because I wanted to be there to help explain.
well, we were trying to keep you protected always,
I get that.
and we've done that all
There
year
were
long.
some people I know I needed protection from in the family.
Yes. At any rate, we supported you. We realized after the diagnosis that we were always going to be helping to support you in some way or another. And, so we had to make provisions in our life that, to make sure that there was always some help for you available. That took a lot of effort and work on our part and a lot of sacrifice, but we did it graciously and because we love you. As time has gone by, we've always been proud of everything you've accomplished, and you've accomplished so much. Nobody who knew you as a youngster would have ever dreamed that you could be where you are today.
No.
You're amazing.
No, nobody
Amazing.
would ever believe that.
Yeah. So that's kind of how it's been, in my opinion. I was working most of the time when you were growing up, so Mom might be able to add some to that, because she was there with you every day, comforting you when you came home from school and all of that, you know.
Well, she would come home from school crying because there was this little group of kids who, when she stepped out of school, after school, they'd jump on her. And the one girl always wore cleats, wore some kind of tennis shoes and had cleats on them. And she'd always, and Shana was wearing a dress, and she would put her cleats on Shana's leg and slide right down and take the skin and the flesh off with it. And Shana would come home crying every day with that. And
But it was not just that, that was part of it. But there were 20 kids who would wait for me after school outside the doors to the hallway, and the same 20 kids would jump me after school and beat me. And the teachers knew it was happening, but they allowed it. That was at Whitcomb Elementary. So, but the bullying went on all day long at school, really bad. But the worst abuse happened as soon as the school bell rang and we had to walk outside. Because the teachers wouldn't stand outside to protect the students. And they knew I was getting beat. So every day I came home from school bleeding.
But you wouldn't let Mom do anything about it because you said it would make it worse.
And it would have.
Well, if she showed her face at school, which she kept saying, I want to go up to the school and talk to them.
Yes.
I said, make phone calls, but don't show up, because if they see you, it will get worse. So the school allowed the bullying and the teachers allowed it. And the students knew the pattern, so it could get worse. And then it did. It just got worse and worse and worse.
Okay, but you survived it, and you succeeded better than most of those kids that did it to you. And that's something you have a lot to be proud of.
That's right.
Very
And I
much.
was back where we used to live when you were in school there, and went into the store, and there was a girl working there. When she saw my last name and even saw me, she said, "Oh, you're Shana's mom. I know you." And I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Well, who are you?" Of course, she's all these years later, she'd grown up and she's changed and married and had children. And so I didn't recognize her. She told me her name, and I remembered who she was. I realized that I recognized her then. And she apologized. She said, "Well, no, I didn't actually hurt Shana, but I was with the group who, well, you know how it is." They said there's one group, the big group, who's doing something. You go with the big group, the one that's in charge," she said. And so she was kind of with that group, but she didn't do anything to hurt you, but she was really sorry, you know.
That was really nice.
That things happen.
Yeah, she should have.
She's an adult now, she understands what happened, what's going on.
It's interesting though, like when I went back to a class reunion, the only one I went to, some people didn't grow up. They stayed the same.
Is that?
I was like, wow, how do people stay the same? When you're choosing to treat people that way, why would you choose to stay the same? Like I just remember thinking that they were still the same. And they still looked at me the same, and they still ganged up together, and they still laughed at me the same. And then some people who've been really mean ended up stepping up and being really nice. And that was really shocking for the people who were nice to just come up and be nice. I was terrified of them because I never knew kindness from some of the people. But then one day I was at the post office and saw one of the families that, you know, when mom wasn't well, you know, with migraines or whatever, I'd go to their house and they would avoid me completely. And I could tell the mom was telling the girls not to talk to me, like leave me alone. So they would completely avoid me. So I saw one of the girls and I was like, hey, how are you? She's like, oh, I've got to make a call. Everybody has cell phones. And I just remember saying, she's like, I'll be there in a minute. I said, okay. So I just kind of waited for a minute to say hi. And she was on a pretend phone call. And I waited for like 2 or 3 minutes and I realized what was happening. So I just got in the car and left, which is what she was hoping would happen. And I realized this mother who groomed her daughters, we all went to church and school together, but she groomed them to treat me that way. And I think they were already going to a little bit, but I think they've been groomed that way by the mother. And what do? I mean, there's nothing you can do to change how people are going to treat you. So sometimes people don't change and they don't grow up.
That's true, that is true. They don't, some do.
It's
In
really
fact,
strange.
Michael at the last class reunion that I went to, and that's been many years ago, the guy who sat behind me came up and he said, I guess after all this time, it's time that I apologize to you. And I started laughing because I knew what he was going to say. Every time before I'd sit down, he put a tack on my seat. And one time, it must have been a long time, he really got me. And about that time, as soon as I sat down, in walked I forget it was somebody up, one of the higher ups in school. And I sat there and we all had to smile and her tears were all running down my face, you know. And I was sitting there just grinning, but you know, you're in high school, you don't make anything of it, you just let it go and you don't say anything. And then I just laughed at him. He didn't mean any harm, he's just a boy in high school, you know, they just do that.
Just a prankster.
Just a prankster, and, but he still felt he should apologize after all these years, and, I said, oh, look, I forgave you a long time ago. I said, don't worry about us then, and, we started talking a little bit, and then something else was going on, so he went back to his seat with his wife, and, but it was funny to me that I knew he remembered it, he kept looking at me, and I knew that's what he was thinking about. Sure enough, he came over. But that was not really bullying, that was just a boy in high school. That age, had to do something, and that's what he did. But, and I'd look before I'd sit down, and still there was a tack on that seat every time I sat down. But I sat down real hard too, and oh my goodness, it stuck my skirt to me, and, he realized he really got me that time, and so he never happened to get up to that. But it was,
I bet you must have drawn blood a little bit or something from that attack, I can imagine.
pardon?
You imagine you must have drawn some blood from that if you're sitting on attack. Jeez.
Well, I couldn't pull it out until the person left. I didn't want to. And I almost think I was called. I was called on. I had to stand up, and that's when he saw that my skirt was pinned to me. And I think that's what really made him. That got him. That like I said, once he saw that and realized what kind of damage he could do, what kind of pain he could inflict. He never did it again.
Wow.
Never did.
He's got a conscience about it at some point.
That's great that somebody had a conscience.
I mean, it was just something. It wasn't a bullying thing. It was just something a high school boy was gonna do.
That's ridiculous.
Shana, why don't you ask us some questions specific, because you know more about all of this
I was thinking about like independent living for adults and really financial stability or financial planning, like what that looks like.
Well, we decided financial planning was we had to save, so I had a pretty good job.
Mm-hmm.
We made good money that we did not live like we did. We lived in
I remember.
a typical small house. We didn't go a lot of places, like a lot of people did, and never got a boat, never got a camper, all the things I had wanted to do. So we just skinnied ourselves down. We had a budget that we lived on, and we specifically saved every nickel that we could.
Right.
And we invested it, and over time, we were successful. And we have set up a trust to protect you for the rest of your life.
Okay.
That's what most people with a disabled child should do, because
Yeah, it's a
by
disability account.
yeah, by having everything in the trust, no one else can ever take it from you. It is protected by law,
Right.
and it will be yours through the trust. It's owned by the trust, and the trust is a legal entity with a lot of legal protection. So
And the
anyone,
taxes are lower, right?
no, in a trust, the taxes are higher, but if the trust is properly written for the IRS rules for a special needs trust, anything the trust earns is used to support you, and therefore is an expense of the trust and avoids having to pay tax on it.
Okay.
And that's the benefit of having it in a trust, and one of the benefits. The other benefit is liability. If you were to get in an accident, they cannot sue your trust and take your funds because it's a protected trust.
Okay.
There are a lot of benefits for you in your future. And even now, we manage the trust at this time, but when we're gone or unable to manage the trust, there'll be a bank trust company managing it.
It's very strict rules
But-
and laws
Yeah,
regarding the trust.
Ask any questions you have about this, because I know this is something that might be able to help you.
I don't have anybody who's gonna be able to set up a trust for me, that's for sure. So, I mean, I don't know how that would manifest for me, which is why, of course, I mean, I'm working on the business and doing the things that I'm doing so I can make sure to set myself up.
yeah.
And hopefully set up into some kind of secure funds, possibly a trust or other kind of secure funds that are maybe slow growing, so that if I do get older, that I can make sure that I am financially set and secure, especially when I'm at a point where I can no longer work.
Absolutely.
Now, we have a friend with disabilities, and he has a disability trust. And what he does is he has the trust by rental properties. So the trust owns multiple houses. One of those houses he lives in, and he's looking at acquiring another house close to here. And
That's clever.
so the trust is earning income through the rental properties. So he has a couple of houses in Boulder, he has a house in Longmont, he's looking at houses in this neighborhood,
Probably a lot of equity too.
a lot. But he's able to travel, support himself completely. He runs his own business working from home, very part-time, because of his disabilities and his challenges. He doesn't miss any festivals. He travels for music. He travels to see the Pet Shop Boys with New Order or whatever. Like, he travels and he has a lot of fun, and he's not missing out on life, even though he's in chronic pain and sometimes needs adaptive equipment for mobility and is struggling with other things associated with disabilities. So to me, that's a fantastic use of a trust that he is managing. He runs and manages his disability trust.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Well,
really.
But is it a special needs
Yes,
disability
yeah,
trust? You're
it
sure?
is, it is.
Okay.
It's labeled as such.
Uh-huh.
But I don't
I've
think,
talked with him about that.
That's
Okay.
different. than-
legally, you can't run your own trust. So I don't know what you're talking
Well,
about, sweetheart.
this is Colorado.
it-
He lives in Colorado.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Well, but that's under the IRS rules. That's,
He found a loophole with the assistance of someone who assists with that. I could have you talk with him, see how that works.
no, we got ours set the way we want it set.
Okay, because I was thinking if there's other properties in it that can be rental properties, that might be other, I don't know, it's just a thought. Because that might be, if you have one or two of those, that might be worthwhile.
I definitely don't have the energy and the mindset to be looking. I used to be into real estate.
Right.
I mentioned I was a stockbroker a long time ago, a lifetime ago, but my brain so does not work like that. So.
Neither does his.
But I'm just saying, I would have to have somebody help me with. I can't do that.
Yeah, he has someone to help
I cannot
him.
do that.
And he has someone who manages
For
the
the time to go out and
properties.
look for properties, and
Yeah.
I don't have the. I don't.
Yeah.
I would love to. It sounds like a phenomenal idea, but I'm thinking with what I'm
Okay.
working on now. I'm going to find a way to turn that into kind of, and I think what we're doing, you know, the projects that I'm
I
into,
do.
and they could turn into a lot of money. It's going to take some time, but they have the potential to be worth and be earning a lot of income for me at some point. Not right now yet, but they can.
Yeah,
And of course, working on a GoFundMe, so I can hopefully, keep myself leveled for the time being, take care of my car, certain basic needs, and be able to get the ability to do the work I need, so that the things that I'm working on can become the kind of money that will set me up, and I can start creating. Because I thought about this. I do still have some regulation of how some of the business side works. Being able to set myself in certain, whether it's CDs, money markets, or any number of things that are relatively secure funds. I haven't looked into it in a long time to say which ones are the secure funds nowadays, but find where the secure funds are. Even the low interest rate things that I know are okay, they're protected. They don't fluctuate a whole lot. So if I have a depression or a recession in the market or something like that, I wouldn't lose too much value. Things like that I consider as we're moving forward. But eventually, I want to, again, make sure I'm in a position so as I do get older, and in a place, I think, with a traumatic brain injury and a father who's got late-stage Alzheimer's, I got to wonder how much time do I have? Genetically, I'm already predisposed to this. I don't know. I'm not guaranteed to get it, obviously, but at the same time, I got to think that it's a very potential reality for me as I get older. So I want to make sure that what I'm doing now can set me up. So should I go down that road, my health, faltered at some point, that I am covered. Medical wise, I got to make sure my medical expenses are covered by all means. Especially whatever happens as I get older, because things are going to happen. We get older, things happen. And of course, just make sure that I can continue to have some kind of just quality of life. So again, I can continue to maybe write my books and do the things that I am able to do. Because as you know, my whole thing is I can't work a regular schedule anymore. I can't be counted on for, say, 40 hours a week or something like that. There's just no way. I get too many migraines and they're unpredictable sometimes. But yet, when I do feel well, I'm not a couch potato. I don't care to watch TV or anything like that. I want to work. I want to do things that are productive. So when I'm able to, it's all about how do I grow this? And working with someone like, again, this is one of the reasons why we work together. Part of it is because we have such a wonderful friendship, but also this is one of the reasons why we work together. And you've turned me on to some wonderful people that are also helping out now. And I think it's just a matter of time that I can get myself into that position where I can create that kind of financial security for myself as well.
You bet.
And I don't have to think about it anymore. It's taken care of. It's set. And I've got the right people helping me with it, and they got my back, and I know I'll be good.
That's wonderful.
That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
you do the best you can.
I know.
Each of us does the best we can.
One thing I am is very, very stubborn. When I get determined about something, I find my way. Again,
Good.
it's very challenging because of these certain circumstances, but I'm going to figure it out, and I feel like I'm going to get there.
You bet.
Good luck.
So-
No, thank you.
Best of
Seriously.
luck.
so Rex, how do you manage chronic pain with friendships? Because I have lost friends because of chronic pain.
I have.
Have you?
Not everybody really understands. Sometimes, I even dated a girl. I don't want to name names or anything because
No.
but at the same time, I even dated a girl years ago that sometimes even made me feel guilty when I didn't feel good. And sometimes I think she even kind of assumed I use it as an excuse sometimes, maybe not to engage with certain things. Because sometimes she was, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to her, but she could be very high maintenance at times, and somebody who can get tired easily. Because one of the things about my TBI is I don't have the energy. Even though I'm a 56-year-old, I don't have a lot of energy a lot of times, and when I get run down, the migraines hit, and sometimes she just didn't understand that. And I think she was, and because of that, I loved her and I wanted to step up for her. I would push myself in times when I should have just been resting. It would just make my situation just compound it and make it that much worse. So it could have been a one-day event, all of a sudden becomes a multi-day event. And then just made it more tensions where she was concerned, and she would just get more frustrated with me. Even little things sometimes, because my sense of direction is so gone now. Even with a GPS, even with a nice modern GPS, I still get confused. I still get lost, and that would frustrate her. We'd try to drive someplace, and I take a few extra turns to get there. She'd get frustrated with me. It's like, oh, come on, give me this. Like a lot of relationships in the beginning, she was very patient and really wonderful about that. But as time went on, I could just tell this wore on her.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we're not together is I kind kind of, by the end of the relationship, it's just like run right into the ground. I remember after we broke up, I was just down for like a week straight. Just like the worst migraines, because that happens sometimes. If I get too run down, I literally can go down for like a whole week. And I wouldn't wish this on even anybody in this world to be down, and I know you can relate, but to be down.
Yes.
It's one thing to be down for a day with a migraine, but to be down for an entire week, you add to that sleep deprivation, because when that happens, now I'm not sleeping at all. I can go a whole week and have maybe just 3 or 4 hours of sleep in an entire week. So add sleep deprivation to that. And because, you know, I mean, I think anyone would go through atrophy, but because I like to work out, I like to keep myself in shape when I can move, despite all my arthritis and whatnot, but I still like to keep in shape. But then the atrophy kicks in, so you got the, not only do I have my normal daily pains, but then add the atrophy, sleep deprivation, a week of migraines, it's miserable. It is misery beyond belief. And I won't lie to you when I say, when I go through that, I'm like, please, just let me die. And when it goes that long, you don't know when it's going to end. And I'm just laying there, gosh, just let me go. I mean, I'm in the middle of this, and just let me go right. You know, and of course I didn't. I'm still here, and I'm grateful to be here. I don't mean it that way, but when you're in the middle of it, and it's miserable. I'm a grown man. I'm a martial artist. I've fought my whole life and everything. And I'm telling you, I'll just lay there and cry like a little girl sometimes, and it's just so miserable. Just I don't know what else to do, but just lay there in my bed, and I'm in the dark. It's quiet. Just everybody leave me alone, and I just cry. It's horrible. It's horrible. I don't wish that on anyone. It's just. So what I'm saying is, and you know, sometimes people don't understand. In that relationship, that was part of what became such a nightmare about it. And the reason I actually broke up with her initially is because it's like, girl, I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. I love you. I really love you. I want to come through for you. I really do. But I'm exhausted and I hurt and I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore.
Right. Yeah. It can.
I mean, that's the extreme
so
example.
hard.
But most of my friends, I would say, most of my friends, especially all these years later, you're right, it's definitely thinned out. A lot of people that I was close to years ago, they're not part of my life anymore. And I think it's partly because of that. It's not easy to deal with somebody who doesn't always come through, hey Rex, everybody's going out tonight. You want to come out and hang out with us? Sorry, I'm not feeling very good. I got to stay in tonight. Sorry. And you do that a few times and people stop inviting you out. But again, I still have those friends that I go back again many years with in some cases. And I do. I've got beautiful people in my life these days who show me patience now. So I want to say it's to everybody. But to answer your question, I've definitely lost friends and I had a relationship that ended because of it. But at the same time, I also have the people in my life now that show me that patience. And if I say I can't go out tonight, they're not going to stop inviting me the next time around because I know if I feel well enough, I'm going to be there because I want to go out. I want to be sociable. I want to enjoy this life. I came back from, you know, I had a near-death experience for crying out loud. And one of the things I came back with is I want to live. I want to go enjoy things. I want to do things I've never done before. And in my life before, I was very much an island. I was very much a loner, despite being a promoter and a DJ and all the things I did. But now I come back going, you know what? I want to connect and share and be a part of things. You know, and I want to have people that, I don't want to say in a needy sense, but I'm comfortable needing people in my life now. Because they're important to me and they make a difference to my life, and I want to feel like I can make a difference in their lives as well. So it's kind of both ends. On the one hand, I've discovered who the really beautiful people are, because I've got, again, people like you, and of course getting to know you guys, and of course you too, I'm just getting to know you as well, that are just wonderful parts of my life, and they understand, and that patience is there for those people, and no matter what happens, I know that it's okay. I'm welcome to join them for the night out, or whatever the case may
The
be.
next time, maybe after this time.
That's right.
That's great.
Yeah, the main thing is that people don't stop inviting us because we will show up.
When we can, we totally show up.
Whenever we can show up, we show up.
And I'll be on the dance floor all night, going out
That's
and having
right.
fun the whole bit. I
I'll
love
probably
it.
be down the next day, but I'll be on the dance
Yeah, I'll be
floor.
down. It might be like taking the next day off, but I'm sure gonna go have some fun, enjoy my
That's
friends,
right.
and put a smile on my face, and hopefully put a few smiles on some other friends' faces while I'm
You
at it.
bet. Enjoy it when you can.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Savor every moment.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I do. I cherish every moment so much now.
It deserves
More than ever.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So much. And what about for you? Like, what is that like? Like, if I can't go somewhere, but you see me trying and I'm going through something, like, how is that?
I see how disappointed you are when you can't do what you want to do. When you're feeling ill and it keeps you down, and then you're just really worn out from that. So there's things, your desire to do all the normal things that we were just talking about. You want to do it, but you can't always do it. So.
But what is that like for you if I can't go?
You usually have more of a drive to go out than I do.
When you're feeling good, you want to go.
Yeah.
When I'm feeling good, even when I'm not feeling good.
And you're on the dance floor too. I've seen you out, especially like when
Oh,
I'm
you
DJing or
know.
something like that. You're out there dancing the night away, and you're having a great time talking to people. So yeah.
You're one of my favorite DJs. That
Oh,
makes
thank
it
you.
easy.
Appreciate that.
It's true. I mean, our friends can DJ, and it's like, okay, I know pretty much what I'm gonna hear. Rex DJs is a whole other thing. It's
Aw.
like, I never know what I'm gonna hear, and every song's gonna be better than the one before, and it's just so good.
Thank you.
Because you play everything that we want to hear, and it's amazing. Yeah, the stuff that we talk about.
Mhm.
Why doesn't anybody play this? Rex does.
Thank you.
Rex
Appreciate
covers that. It's true.
It's not to say we don't have great DJs in our scene, for sure.
We do. We have amazing DJs.
And some of those are some of my closest friends too, which is why I get to DJ once in a while, because sometimes they'll reach out to me, hey Rex, you want to come share the booth with me tonight? Like, oh, heck yes. If I'm feeling good,
So
heck
good.
yes.
I'm trying to think, like, what are some other things that, well, we haven't covered, obviously, like parents and end of life, because that's the big one. That's the one I can never talk about. Mom and Dad try to have conversations with me about, we won't always be here, you know, you have to have a conversation like this, and that's all they have to say, and then I'm just all tears. Oh my God, I can never talk about that. Okay, so.
Well, we keep
Let's
trying.
go for it.
We keep trying to get you. We understand how difficult it's gonna be for you. You're an only child. You do have cousins. Some of them are close, most of them are not. You're gonna be kind of alone, very much alone.
Terrifying.
And I understand that's terrifying. That's why we have done as many plans as we can for you. But you have to one day face it and be able to talk it over with us.
So you'll know.
So you will know and be able to handle it when it comes. It will
Otherwise-
come, you know that.
What are some bits and pieces of it that you can name?
What, huh?
What are some bits and pieces of it? Like that conversation? What are like little tiny pieces?
Well, you know, how do you do a good job of caring for yourself? We have allowed you all your life to be as independent as you want to be. We've given you freedom, you know, to succeed, and you have in many, many ways. And so what we want to do when we talk about the end is we want to talk to you about what we hope you will do, what kind of life you will have, and what, you know, you're gonna have to know what to do with us when we pass. We've written what we want done at our funerals and all that stuff.
Right.
You know where they are, but I don't think you read them, cause you don't wanna think about it too much, and I understand.
Yeah, we've talked about it a little.
Yeah, we talk about that a little bit, you know, some of the basics. That's basically, you know, what we just need to sit down and say, what are you gonna do? What can we do to help you, through that?
And I know how hard that must be, and I can only imagine, you know, trying to anticipate it, because when my mother died, I was 22 years old, and even though she wasn't doing great, I did not see that coming. We did not anticipate that she was gonna die like that, and so suddenly when it happened, and we never had that conversation. I was not prepared for it at all. As I said, I went from literally being in the business world, making a lot of money, to being homeless inside of a year because I didn't handle it. I did not do well by it at all, and I wonder sometimes if maybe we'd had that conversation, maybe a little more time to even kind of prepare the best that you can. There's no way to prepare for losing such a loved one. There's just no way to be ready for those feelings that are going to come when it happens. But at the same time, having those conversations and being able to engage and us making sure you say everything you ever want to say. I know you guys love each other, probably say that all anyways, but I mean, just making sure that no matter what happens, you said everything you really want to say to each other. So when that day comes, because you don't know when it's going to happen,
Right.
that you know you can leave it with peace. You're going to grieve and it's going to hurt, but at the same time, you can still move on peacefully because you know
Yeah.
you said and did everything you wanted to say with each other.
Yeah.
That's going to help.
And that you know what to do.
That's kind of the conversation we want to have with you. Nothing dramatic all at once, dump it on you. The longer you give us, we can have smaller conversations to prepare you and help you. We worry about it, just like you do, but we have to face it.
It's terrifying. I mean, yeah, you know. I mean, I see the pain in your eyes right now just remembering.
Sure. And even, of course, my dad isn't doing very well. Of course, with Alzheimer's, he can live for a while, but he's obviously not going to be himself here soon. And, you know, I don't know when that's going to happen. Like I said, he's already in late stage Alzheimer's. I know people with Alzheimer's can live for a while, but who's to say at what point they go visit my dad and he doesn't remember me anymore, or my brother.
That's hard. That's hard.
That'd be
difficult
But you know,
parts.
just remember, it's the illness.
Yeah, I do, and thankfully we've had, you know, in his case, my brother and I, we have time, and his partner too, we have time with him right now, so at least we can talk about things, even though he's a little bit reluctant, which is very understandable,
Yes.
but at the same time, I think, you know, it's gonna make the transition, well, as easy as such a transition can be, I guess.
Yeah,
It's never easy, but as easy as it can
less-
be under the
less,
circumstances.
Yeah.
And yes, my mother, I miss her dearly, absolutely. It's been since 1988, I was 22 years old. I remember her like she was here yesterday.
Yeah.
How she felt to hug her, I remember the sound of her voice, how she smelled, I mean, everything, like she was here
Yeah,
That's
yesterday.
great. You'll
Yeah.
always have those.
I will,
memories.
always,
Those are good
always. She's
memories.
with me, she's one of my guardian angels. We've
That-
talked
that's
about this
right.
before.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And Derek, you worked in the funeral industry. What are some
Interesting.
things that you can offer people, since you were not just embalming and doing makeup and doing fillers and some of the cool stuff, but you were also the funeral director and officiating services, but helping people make arrangements. You had no plans at
We're
all.
grieving, I mean, you've dealt with grieving people
Yeah,
then.
grieving, but people who also didn't have plans and didn't see things coming.
Yeah, that's pretty difficult when people are scattered to try and figure out how to pay for the funeral when they weren't expecting it. So pre-planning, as Buddy and Ruby have already done, the pre-plan, that's great. Everybody needs to do some sort of pre-plan for themselves. So it's taken care of. The advantage of a pre-planned funeral is you pay for it at today's prices, and then it builds interest in a policy, and then it pays out. You don't personally make money on it, but you already paid for your funeral.
Yeah,
You paid
you don't
for
have
it.
to, you don't have to pay the higher
You
price.
don't pay the higher prices, inflation and costs change, it builds interest, and then your
So the interest
funerals.
covers any potential inflation.
Yeah, so
Interesting.
that's what it's for, but then it's all covered, and you can make that pre-plan, write everything that you want. This is what I want to happen in my funeral. I want this to be my final disposition. I want these things to happen, and I want my family to go, great, now my family member passed, all the kids got to scrape money together to take care of it. You take care of it yourself, and that's probably the greatest gift you can pass on to anybody, is where they don't have to deal with that at the very end when they're grieving, and financially have to take care of that because it's already been, you already thought about that, you already have it covered. Because people fight over money, there's policies, people borrow against the policies sometimes, but when you have a pre-need policy, you can't borrow against it.
It's great that you say that, because I didn't realize that. That's actually amazing that's an option for somebody if they take their time to research it and then set it up that
And you
way.
can make payments on it too. And it's an insurance policy. So if you're paying out on your policy and it's worth a certain amount, and you pass the grace period, which is generally like 2 years, and then you die, it pays out in full.
Wow,
So your funeral is still paid for.
that's pretty important to know.
So-
It is.
So that's probably the biggest piece of advice, is to pre-plan your funeral.
I think
Pay
that's
for it.
great advice.
You
Not that
pre-plan,
it's,
you pay for it in advance, and you can leave, that's the best gift you could leave behind for your family, so they're not worried about how they're gonna cover that expense, and what did you want, what did this person want, it's all taken care of.
That is, I totally agree with him.
Yeah.
That is,
See, a lot of people die, they have no money left by the time they die. They've spent it all in the retirement years, and by the time they die, they have almost nothing left. And a funeral is expensive,
it's expensive and it's
Yeah.
going up every year. That's for sure.
and will.
For sure.
So that's why 22 years ago, we paid for everything ahead of time.
Right.
Made all the choices, all the decisions, so you don't have to do it
that we didn't want you to be here your morning, and then you're handed a bill, what, for all of them.
Oh
You definitely don't wanna
my
make
gosh, I
business
can't even
decisions for
imagine.
your morning.
That's right,
That's
that's
right.
absolutely true.
True.
I can't imagine that.
So, well,
But you had to do that. You had to live that.
Yes, my mother died. I'm the older child, so yeah, I dealt with all that. I mean, that was, I was 22 years old. I was so not prepared for it. You know, I mean, the people around me, you know, like, I mean, there's a few people that did kind of help me out and give me some insights, but yeah, I had to make all those decisions myself. And then there's also the having to call the relatives and call the friends and tell everybody, okay, my mother just passed, and that whole thing was also,
That's awful.
that was really, really difficult.
There are options for people that maybe don't have the means to pre-plan a funeral. If somebody they're disabled and they don't have funds, they're probably already in government programs that they are getting assistance for
In my
already.
dad's case,
which
it's
would-
going to be taken care of, thankfully.
Which would automatically qualify you for that assistance.
Right.
So you would have to go in and say, this person has assistance, and so there would be like burial assistance by the county that you live in. So the state offers it, it's available, but it's limited. So you can't go out and like, sky's the limit, bring out the limos and the dove release and release butterflies too, that's not gonna happen.
Right.
It's just a dignified, simple, affordable service, but people that say, we don't have any money, what do? There are burial assistance programs by the county that will
If
cover
you're dealing
those
with somebody like
expenses.
Alzheimer's, which is a long-term thing, and again, he could live for a while this way, of course, even, you know, not knowing us, but he could still be living, but at some point he's gonna need full-time care. So thankfully, you know, he's in a situation, and my brother's very savvy when it comes to business, and things have been set up where, I mean, if and when the time comes he needs to be in full-time care, that's all gonna be covered, thankfully, and when he does
Very
pass,
good.
thankfully, that will be handled, thankfully.
That's great, that's great.
yeah, well, this is all good discussion, Shana, because
It is.
you in particular have avoided
I
having
have.
some of these conversations. And the sooner you're ready, we're here,
That's right.
and let's get it done.
And it's in knowledge can't be taken away from you. And you're better off with the knowledge about what to do. Not that all of a sudden, well, hey, they're gone, but what do I do first? What am I supposed to do? You know, the directions are there.
The conversation's important to have too, as my dad was avoiding it. I said, well, what do you have set up? Mom and I have it covered, it's all taken care of. Well, can you tell me what that means? What do you mean it's taken care of? And he didn't want to talk about it, but I said, Dad, you have to tell me what's going on. So he finally explained about the policy that they had and what it was gonna cover, and I was like, that's not gonna cover what you think it's gonna cover. And he completely had to change his plan, because he didn't really, like in his mind, he thought, oh, this dollar amount should be plenty.
Yeah.
It
today.
was like enough to maybe purchase the burial plot, to buy the vault, and to have the opening.
Yeah.
Maybe just that much.
Yeah.
Not any of the other expenses that he was thinking, and he was thinking that was enough for 2 people. Like,
Wow.
no, so I had to have a conversation with him
That was
to
good.
tell him what's involved, and that's the difference between burial and cremation. Burial is very, very expensive, if that's your wish for your final disposition, is burial, because you have to purchase land, purchase a vault, purchase a casket, have the ground open, have it closed, all of those things. None of it's free. Nobody's giving you that, like, oh, my family member died. There's a business out there.
Only the beginning.
It's just the
Yeah,
beginning
I know
of those expenses.
Cremation's a lot more affordable.
Yeah, cremation's a lot more affordable, but a lot of people don't want that. That's not what they
Right.
want for their final disposition. But cremation is by far the cheapest route to go for your final disposition.
Wow.
Yeah, and Shana, you have great talents in art, music, entertainment business and all that stuff, but you have never really been prone to learn about business itself. So when you talk about, you have a friend that has a trust and he's investing in real estate, and that's how his trust is gonna make money for him. I have seen the real estate market crash totally. And you remember in '84 in Houston?
I remember.
Okay, yeah, there were houses, hundreds, thousands of new homes sitting empty that people had bought, and then the crash came and they couldn't pay for them, they just abandoned them, ruined their credit and all that stuff, and the houses were worth nothing at the time. And so if you had invested in that and you happen to need the money at a time of the crash, during good times, everybody has money. You know, when the market's up, everybody's rich. When the market's down, everybody's tight and questioning.
Yeah.
So you have to have a trust that doesn't just invest in one thing.
Exactly.
And it has to be managed by professionals, not amateurs.
Somebody,
Agreed.
that
Yeah,
you can
and
trust.
so that's why the trust we have set for you is managed that way. And it's an important part of your future.
And it has,
You're not gonna live like a millionaire and have an airplane and all this stuff, but you're gonna always have a decent place to live.
Right.
If you don't spend it too quickly.
Right.
Okay.
Of course, and I'm working hard to have my own business. We have this.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot of things that I'm doing to set myself up for success.
And that's wonderful.
You know, because with disabilities and with health issues, I'm not gonna be able to work 40 hours a week for somebody else. You can't work 40 hours a week for somebody else. But we can do things in a non-conventional way.
And still be very productive.
Absolutely.
Good. And I'm proud of you for everything you accomplished, you know that, Mom and I are. But I'm just saying to you, the reason we established the trust the way we did is to protect you against the bad times and against bad people.
Yes.
So you,
You mean those happen too?
yeah, once in a while.
Hey, guys. There's a lot of scammers out there.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to discuss when it comes to adulthood, transitioning skills, and disabilities? Does this feel pretty
I
complete?
think we've had quite a conversation tonight. We've covered a lot of ground,
We
a
did.
lot of interesting places, and
Great.
well,
I'm not just getting late, huh?
Bedtime.
something that you, I guess need to think about, where do you want to live? How do you want to be living?
Yeah.
I'd say after we're gone.
Right.
Say you're not married and you've been doing whatever business you have here, what do you want to do? It's just like, you know,
Yeah.
like, you said somebody you knew was, living in or somebody, who was that, I forget now. But in a home with others, I don't know, maybe it's a group home, I don't know, nothing like that.
No, that's not the skill set that I have.
Okay, well.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Okay, but just an example, what would you be doing, what would you want to do?
yeah.
Move a bunch of friends into this house and make it a party house?
Oh, there's gonna be a lot of peace and quiet there.
I'm kidding.
Shana, by the time we died, this house is gonna be 120 years old.
The house is 5 years old.
But
Oh, that's fun.
that's the way you have to think.
Right. I like that. That is how I
Yeah,
think.
my favorite statement when people say, "How old are you?" I say my age, and I say, "And I'm just getting started."
That's right.
That's, you
I
gotta
feel like
look
I'm just
forward to
getting
the
started.
future.
Yeah, every day I think we're just getting started. And I think your story, you know, coming back from death and me having come so close to death so many times, like, you can't walk again. Oh, guess what? You recovered. Like, going through that scenario more than once. Like, you know, it's,
I think you've heard me say, I often joke that, you know, when I fell, it was 11 years ago, 11 and a half years ago. I often joke that I'm an 11-year-old, maybe going on 12, because I'm living an entirely new paradigm of reality. Everything is completely different. I'm completely different, and it's like, even though I have 56 years of life experience, I'm still I'm like learning as a child. I mean, I'm still new to this experience. I'm still acclimating and adapting and trying to process all these sort of on the one hand all the limitations that I have and dealing with the migraines and things like that, but on the other hand some of these newfound abilities and abilities to think and process in terms of like quantum theory, to cosmology, to consciousness, to also being able to write and produce music, which I had not done before. I was a DJ all my life, but I've never written and produced music myself and been a part of music projects. So on the one hand, it's been a blur. So it's kind of been a blessing on the one hand, but it's a curse on the other, which that the word actually means. So, but yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because it is. I'm like 11, almost 12 years into this reality, and sometimes I feel like I'm a child relearning everything all over again.
Yeah, that's amazing to start over when you're 22 years old.
Or 44 years old in my case,
Oh,
yeah.
It was 22 when your mother died.
Yeah.
Yeah, 44 when you had the accident.
Right.
Yeah, amazing.
You've had a lot of starting over.
I definitely have. It's been quite the life. A lot of overcoming, but the thing is, I've always overcome, and I'm going to find my way through this too. I mean, we will. I'm not doing it alone anymore.
That's
we're
right,
gonna
it's
find our way
community.
through this, and you're finding your way too, and
That's
you're finding your way, and we're going to do this. I mean, that's the whole thing.
Absolutely.
One thing about me is, when I make a decision about something, I'm crazy stubborn, and I'm gonna figure it out, and we're gonna figure it out. It's inevitable. I don't know how long, but it's gonna happen. It's inevitable. It's coming.
Great.
That's perfect. We want to thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again very, very soon on the next episode of Rex.
Yay! Thank you.
I'm Shana.
Love you.
Thank
Appreciate
you. Take care.